degrees of health which I am dealing are psychological, physical, and spiritual. Picture an addict or an alcoholic. What does this person look like? Is it an old man sitting on a street corner begging for money to buy his drug of choice? Or is it a young woman stumbling out of a bar who can not stand up, much less walk? Or is it a man or woman who goes to work each day and takes care of their family? Who comes to mind and how did they get that way? Did they just start one day and not stop? The result culminates into one action: choices. Choosing to take the first drink, partake in any type of drug for the first time or subsequent times, is a self-conscious choice that affects one's health and physical well-being, and can cause both short-term and long-term health issues. Alcoholism also affects one's mental health and can have spiritual ramifications as well. We are all given free will as a gift, or curse as that may be, from our Creator. Therefore, being addicted to drugs or alcohol, i.e. alcoholism, is not a disease. Addiction is characterized by the inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. A choice is defined as the act of picking or choosing between two or more items. Disease is defined as a condition of the living animal or plant body or of one of its parts that impairs the normal functioning and is typically manifested by distinguishing signs and symptoms. Symptomatically, it might be said that addictions could cause people to shake, but that would be withdrawal from the addiction, not a disease. With that in mind, how can one characterize an addiction, alcohol, drugs, or otherwise, as a disease? Again, it all comes down to choices. Some argue that addiction is genetic, and if someone has a parent with an addiction problem, that person may be more prone to be an addict. If they do become an addict, it might be because that person had close contact with addiction and therefore be familiar with it. If this assumption is true, that addiction is genetic, then it would make more sense that the person in close contact would do everything in their power to counteract the undesirable behavior. Growing up and witnessing addictive behavior would most likely be a deterrent instead of a green light. Smoking is a choice as well as drinking and using drugs. Smoking is referred to as a habit, while drugs and drinking are more often labeled as addictions. It is a fact that behaviors all begin as choices. If one never picks up a cigarette to smoke, they will never become addicted to cigarettes. If they do take that first drag, he or she has made that choice. If they continue to smoke, that is his or her choice as well. The same holds true with alcohol and drugs. If someone never chooses to begin use, that person will not obtain a habit or addiction. Drug users are labeled as addicts and are said to have an addiction. People who drink heavily are labeled as alcoholics, and they are given an excuse because of a disease called alcoholism, which interestingly is also labeled as an addiction. Why is it that heavy use of tobacco is not labeled as a disease, and heavy smokers are not labeled smokeaholics? The excessive use of drugs is not labeled as a disease, and labels like shopaholics or workaholics are not diseases either. These labels, just as smoking, drinking, and drug using, are compulsive behavior needs that can be dealt with by choosing not to partake. Alcoholism and drug addiction are not diseases, and there is not now nor has there ever been any scientific evidence of such an accusation. The thought that alcoholism is a disease has always been a political and moral notion with no scientific basis. It is promoted in the United States around 1800 as a speculation based on an inaccurate psychological theory and later became a theme of the temperance movement. The theory was revived in the 1930s by the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, who derived their views from a collection of religious ideas, personal experiences, and observations. And unsupported theories of a contemporary physician, history and science have shown us that the existence of the disease of alcoholism is merely pure speculation. Only saying alcoholism is a disease does not make it true. Medical professionals and American culture embraced the disease concept and quickly applied it to every possible distinct form from alcohol or drug abuse. Research has shown that those behaviors are choices, not diseases. Stripping alcohol abusers of their responsibility by applying the disease concept is a threat to the health of the individual. As you can see from this, alcohol remains the most common substance treated in rehab centers. Saying that alcoholism is a disease takes away the pressure off the person, thereby automatically making it not their fault if they drink. It is their choice not to drink because they have a disease. This is an easy way to sugarcoat an initial bad decision. For example, cancer is a disease. It is a non-conflicting disease that the sufferer never asked for and cannot control. Alcoholism is something that the alcoholic has no control over. Now, the word alcoholism does not describe a disease, but a behavior. Behavior is self-determined by a choice, and therefore that choice is the cure for alcoholism and any form of substance abuse. In fact, it is the only method by which people stop alcohol and substance abuse. Making the choice to just one day stop. Finally, consider the paradoxical nature of the disease theory, the theory that states that once the disease is diagnosed, the alcoholic has lost the power of choosing not to drink or the drug addict not to use drugs. But how can that be true when millions of diagnosed alcoholics have stopped drinking and never returned, and drug addicts have never stopped using drugs? If indeed they lost their power to not use alcohol or other drugs, how did these millions of people with substance problems stop and become miraculously cured of their disease? It is because they choose to stop partaking. My stepfather is an alcoholic, but has been sober for more than 12 years. He and my mother own a liquor store and are soon to open a bar and grill. He made that conscious choice 12 years ago to stop drinking, and he says every day he chooses not to drink anymore. There you have it. I believe I can definitely say that alcoholism is a choice, not a disease. Making the change to sobriety isn't easy, but it is definitely worth it.